Okay, we're now going to take on some of the bigger issues, or some of the issues that you often don't see. And I think when our next two speakers, Kurt Edwards from IBAC and Ed Bolen for NBAA, do their job, often they sort of fight the fires before anyone else realizes about them. I think Ed spends a lot of time running around. He'll get wind of something happening on the Hill, and we'll never know about it. Wherever you like. Good. And Kurt does the same in Montreal, dealing with ICAO and the other associations like NBAA and EBAA. So Ed, what are you focused on this week?
Well, this week, obviously, there's a lot of attention on the shutdown.
Which you said is great, because you get the week off. Is that right?
It hasn't worked out so well. As all of you know, we have now, unfortunately, set the record for the shutdown. There is some hope that now that yesterday's elections are behind us, that we can move forward. But so far in this shutdown, there have been a lot of things that have been presumed to be the forcing function that will get everybody together. And so far, no side has blinked. We do know, particularly with the aviation community, it was the controllers that really led to the last shutdown at 35 days coming to an end. And, we have this kind of bizarre situation where going back to the beginning of the year, January, we had the major accident over the Potomac. 67 lives were lost. And that broke everyone's heart, but it also steeled our resolve. We came together, the entire industry, the White House, Congress, and the public. We demanded a brand new air traffic control system. And we said in a brand new air traffic control system, what we need are people, facilities, and equipment. The people are the air traffic controllers. And so we surged the efforts to bring people into the industry. We increased pay, we expanded where training could take place, we brought in simulation to reduce the total time, and yet here we are, where we may or may not be able, beyond the next 3 weeks, to keep the class together. We are not putting forward a commercial of what you want in an air traffic environment. So, I think aviation in so many ways plays an outsized role in the government services, and that is certainly something that we are seeing today. I know I've got 3 trips over the next 8 days. I think a lot of people in this room do. Getting the government reopened to make sure that we can follow up on our promise to have the largest, safest, most efficient air transportation system in the world is a really important deal. And so that's certainly involving all of our time. NBAA is part of a large coalition of over 50 associations called Modern Skies. And we're a group that has come together over the course of the last year to focus on a brand new air traffic control system. But it's hard to go forward if you can't fulfill the duties of today. So it's a really big issue.
I guess one benefit is aviation's largely bipartisan.
Yes. Yeah, and I think that was reflected, if you look last year, in a presidential election year when virtually nothing gets done. We passed a significant FAA reauthorization bill unanimously out of some committees and almost unanimously on the House and Senate floor. That's kind of unheard of, but it does say something unique about aviation, I think all of transportation, that people recognize how important it is for our economy and for our transportation system, for our job base, and for our balance of trade. This is a really important industry, and I think people recognize that.
So Kurt, you've just come back from the ICAO General Assembly, and for people who don't know, it's sort of like Coachella for aviation regulators. Is that right?
If only I got to dress that way, sure. Yeah, so the ICAO meets every 3 years in its global assembly, so all 193 member states are supposed to be there. This past time, 192. And it was a big 2-week deal, and for business aviation it was especially big because we had our largest delegation attending ever, 24 people from our member associations and industry partners, including Mr. Bolen here, so thanks Ed for being there. And it made an impression because I had a number of directors general of civil aviation approach me and say, wow, business aviation is really becoming more and more engaged here. We're so pleased to see that. So that's a good sign. And there were basically three key issues that we were working on there beyond the visibility issue. One was GNS radio frequency interference, so jamming and spoofing, recognized now by the world as a major issue that needs to be worked on for the efficiency and safety of the system. Both Russia and North Korea were condemned for incidents of actually jamming and spoofing civil aviation. But in addition, ICAO has now set up projects to address detection, address protection, and address resiliency, which for us down the road means likely new AOC requirements and likely equipage requirements, both for new types and for current in-service aircraft. So we'll be working on those projects to see kind of where that goes. No one yet has a solution, but we will be part of that for the industry within the ICAO world. Second issue was ADS-B flight tracking, one of those nearest and dearest to Ed and NBAA's heart here in the United States. Finally, recognition at the assembly that there is a safety and security issue related to ADS-B flight tracking. Prior discussions had focused on privacy, and ICAO doesn't do the P word. They don't really do privacy, but they do safety and security. And presented with instances or examples of how it does cause those types of issues, ICAO said, okay, let's work on this. So we will be part of a project or projects to look at how we can address it. We're hoping that the United States will bring what it has learned from its programs to ICAO to help understand how, for the business aviation community here, how we've addressed those issues. And then the third issue, which is one that is becoming more and more important, is that of a global solidarity levy on aviation. This is a stream of work in another UN agency, the Framework Convention on Climate Change. They're having their meeting in Brazil, Bolen, coming up in November, where a number of states, led by France, are trying to get that group of states, which is the same group of states that meets at ICAO, but they're trying to get those states to agree to a global solidarity levy on aviation, allegedly for climate change action, yet what it really is, it's about whatever one state wants to use with that money, so it goes into the treasury. We got ICAO to, I can't say unanimously, but overwhelmingly condemn that type of action, and that states should abide by the policy guidance on international taxation for aviation that is put out by ICAO. But really what it comes down to, all of us need to be reminding our governments that the aviation and transportation agencies need to be talking with the ministries of environment and the ministries of treasury to keep them from doing this type of thing. We don't think it's going to actually go through unanimously at COP, but we do think that maybe there will be anywhere from 8 to 12 countries that might try to put in place these levies, which then means that they're going to hurt their own economies because there will be reduced flying to those countries.
Ed, anything else you wanted to touch on from ICAO?
I think Kurt did a great job. You know, our community works with the International Civil Aviation Organization through the International Business Aviation Council. And so Kurt does a great job. I think with any organization, it's up to the members to support that. And so we had sister associations from all over the world. And I think Kurt did a great job of bringing us together with a consistent message. and more importantly, helping people understand what business aviation is and why it deserves to be promoted, not disparaged. And so one of the things that we did in preparation was come together really on an international stage under a public message, a branding campaign called Climbing Fast. And I would urge everybody, go to climbingfast.com, because what you see there is that business aviation has a powerful impact on jobs, on economic development, on the global competitiveness of companies, humanitarian flights, and unwavering commitment to net zero emissions by 2050. And so by being able to put forward a positive brand image, we're able to get people to look at us and want to find ways to help business aviation rather than view it as kind of a nice to have, no big deal, whatever is left over. And so I think the fact that we saw the entire world coming together with a consistent message, with a positive brand, and some unique things to offer the world community, I think we had a very successful triennial.
Okay, talking about international issues, one of the other things you've been very busy with is tariffs.
Yeah, tariffs, obviously the world understood that tariffs were going to be a reality with the election in November. It was part of the campaign talk. I think what surprised a lot of people broadly is kind of the extent to some of those tariffs. And I think the thing for aviation that came unanticipated was that it kind of upended the the trade agreement on civil aircraft. Since 1979, 1980, we have had across the board a perfect regime that is flat, it is fair, and it's reciprocal. It said there are 0 tariffs on civil aircraft and aircraft parts. And in that environment, the 30+ countries that were signed on to that multilateral agreement, we've been able to operate in this environment where there are no unnecessary barriers to trade in aviation. We saw that upended because the administration wanted to do bilaterals, not multilateral agreements. And we think that's unfortunate because this is really the example of perfection. And what we saw under it was that the United States, frankly, kicked ass. The United States aerospace industry exports $125 billion and it imports about $24 billion. So what happens if all the markets are open and there is 0 tariffs being involved? The US aerospace industry does really well. So it's one of those things that it didn't really make sense. But what we have been able to do, and it's been a huge industry effort, we've been on Capitol Hill and in the White House with groups from every aspect of aviation. We've gone in with the CEOs of the major airlines. We've gone in with the manufacturers. We've gone in with the entire general aviation community. And in those meetings, what we have been able to show from a data standpoint did lead to the trade agreement from 1980 being reflected in the bilateral with the UK, in the bilateral with Japan, and in the multilateral with the EU. So there's a recognition that there is something good here. Unfortunately, when you have to go country by country, you've got to get through all of those, and we're not there. We've got to solve the situation with Brazil. We've got to solve the situation with Switzerland. We've got to make sure we've got these types of things that aren't subject to the whims of I like you, I don't like you, on both sides. And get this back where it was. Flat, fair, reciprocal, 0 for 0. And, obviously there's an important Supreme Court argument taking place as we speak right now on the president's tariff authority. But look, that environment that we've operated in from 1980 through 2005 initially, we got to get back there. That's the way it should be, and that's what works for America and the entire industry.
Thoughts on tariffs, or?
Oh, I agree with what Ed and NBAA are doing. It came up briefly at the Assembly, but the ICAO doesn't do trade, so it was discussed on the sides. But truly, having served for a while at the U.S. Trade Representative's office, that agreement was the backbone of negotiations between the U.S. and the EU on the Airbus and alleged Boeing subsidies. So getting back to it, I think, is key.
Some of the audience is asking, and this is a difficult one for you because you have members on both sides, operators and FBOs. Does anyone have thoughts on the recent fees that FBOs are charging, including the high landing and special event fees? I think, is it a special event if it's 365 days a year? I don't know.
Yeah, well, I think this is really a front burner issue, and it's really important for how our industry is able to move forward. Part of the value proposition for an aircraft is being able to go where you want to go when you want to go there. And so NBAA recognizes we've got to have access to airspace and we've got to have access to airports. We need those airports to be healthy and sustainable. We need to make sure that those airports are working with us to grow the industry, not close the industry. And through the years, we've worked very hard to have AIP funding and have that formula for GA increasing to try to make that available. We've been very encouraging. Clearly, we know we need hangars, we need services. We're an industry that can grow. But what we are seeing is that there are airports around the country that are saying we want to use fees, and in some cases, it's to reduce operations, not expand them. And some of the highest fees that you will see anywhere are at airports that are actively working to reduce operations. And, one example, you look at a place like Aspen where they're asking aviation to help supplement local funding. It doesn't make sense. So, we're concerned, and I think it really came to a forefront this year during the inauguration when people looked at the fees and said, we feel like we're being gouged. And I think that's kind of the big issue. Are we doing something reasonable to sustain an airport? Are we going beyond that? So it's a major issue. We want to foster an environment that allows business aviation to thrive. That means making it safe, secure, affordable, and I think all of those things come together, and this is a specific challenge. We want healthy airports, we want healthy FBOs. Nobody wants to be gouged.
I think everyone in the room agrees with that. What are your thoughts about enforcing regulations on a legal charter?
This is something we've had discussions on about how you bring this up at ICAO. And it depends on how you want to discuss it. It depends on the terminology you use. But anytime you get into the use of the term illegal charters or even gray charters, folks who are not familiar with our industry become automatically very concerned about the industry and think that we're all behaving that way. And for us, we have to be careful about how we raise the topic at ICAO, and we do when necessary, and we have to make sure they understand that what we really need is for states to be enforcing their rules with regard to charter operators and legitimate charter operators operating. And that's hard for folks to understand, and it's hard for us as an industry to understand when we see that some states do indeed try to enforce their rules, but ultimately they just give a slap on the wrist to different charter operators that have been caught. So the penalties we've seen have not been dissuasive enough to keep us from doing that. So it's definitely a challenge that we're working on.
Illegal charter?
Yeah, well, I think illegal's the key word there. And, you know, as I said, for business aviation to succeed, we've got to be safe and we've got to be perceived to be safe. We have to have a brand promise that equates to our professionalism. I thought that was a phenomenal example where you go in, you buy a car, the car doesn't work, you don't understand it. It's imperative for us to grow. We have to be safe, perceived to be safe. We've got to operate according to the law and make sure that is followed. So you will never see NBAA supporting anything that is illegal. There's a lot of effort being made to make sure that people know what the laws are and how to follow it. It's one of the reasons NBAA works so hard to shape laws and regulations and court precedents so that we can have a system that works for everybody. So yes, fully against illegal charter, working hard to make people understand and be aware where the lines are and what is necessary to operate safely and effectively.
Final question for both of you. Are you going to have less issues in the next 12 months than the last 12 months?
Well, you know, it's interesting. I think when we came into this year, we had just passed the FAA Reauthorization Act, 5-year legislation, and we thought the focus would be on implementing that legislation. What we have seen is that enormous efforts were made to make bonus depreciation permanent. We recognized we had an opportunity to do that, and a lot of time and effort to make that a reality. And as you know, with business aviation, it's just not new aircraft, it's pre-owned aircraft. So I think we accomplished something very significant there. We kept the blender's tax credit, albeit a little bit shrunk, but we kept that in an environment where a lot of people did not think we would see support for something viewed as environmental. We made the case that it was part of national security, energy independence. But I think the safety issue that was part of the accident at DCA, followed by the medical flight, the air ambulance flight in Philadelphia, midair in Scottsdale, a charter in Alaska, really kind of shaped everything. So safety became a priority, but it also opened up this opportunity to build a brand new air traffic control system. And then, of course, the tariffs. So when we look at what we see in the year ahead, we recognize that 2025 was one of the most important and consequential years that we have seen. We know bonus depreciation it's now permanent. All of these things that we work so hard to make happen, you know, it's part opportunity. Sometimes you're given the opportunity to put something in a tax bill. Sometimes you're handed the disaster of a once every 2 decades accident. But we've got to always be working together and promoting. I think, you know, when Michael said so much of our industry is related to public policy and government involvement, that's the reality. And so can we as an organization play big, play strong, play effectively in public policy and government regulation? And I think that's what we're about.
And you've had a big year, so you're off for the next 3, aren't you?
Oh yeah, we're not doing anything for the next 3 years. No, we just had an extremely successful ICAO Assembly where we got pretty much everything we wanted. We were able to get draft resolution language and report language, which at ICAO is very important, nudged in the direction that is favorable to us. So everything that we kind of put out there, we got. Now comes the hard part where ICAO starts assigning the tasks, and we will start with working groups and different panels working on these issues, so be careful what we ask for.
And on that, thank you so much, guys. Coffee is outside.
Thank you.